And hello everybody and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host Christian. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this week. We're going to get right into it because it's the end of the week. I do want to mention though, before we do get into the movie news, that if you didn't listen to the Comic-Con special recap podcast that came out a couple days ago, it is up there if you want to go give it a listen. I had a guest on it. The audio is a little funky. I was going to try something, but I didn't have enough time to actually test it out. So the audio is kind of pretty much like the audio every time I have a guest on. That will change the next time I do have a guest. I am testing something to have better audio when there is guests around. But yeah, if you haven't listened to the Comic-Con special, go right ahead and click over there when you get the chance. Again, I have a guest on. Pretty fun to. It was a fun time to do the podcast. So, but let's get right into this week's movie news items. This week's it feels light, but there is a few big news items that came out this week, especially near the end of the week. So we're just gonna jump right in. There was one news item that came out over the weekend. Of course, with Comic-Con going on, there was a few news items that came out, but one of them that came out was that Mr. Robot creator Sam Esmail is going to write and direct a Bermuda Triangle movie. So, Mr. Robot, of course, is probably one of the best shows on TV right now. If you haven't watched it, it's on the USA Network. It's actually pretty good. There are only 2 seasons in, so if you want to go check it, 2 seasons? Yeah, I think it's 2 seasons. If you want to go check it out, I highly recommend you do. But the creator, Sam Esmail, is about to hit to the big screen. He has been hired to write and direct a film about the Bermuda Triangle for Universal Pictures. Apparently, the studio has been working on this film for a while, but it wasn't until Esmail came in that they're really starting to rev up productions. There's no current plot details at the moment, but with the involvement of Esmail, I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty good. Especially if he brings his Mr. Robot talent to the Bermuda Triangle. Esmail is currently working on an Amazon series called Homecoming with Julia Roberts, so we probably assume that he's going to finish that first and then move on to the Bermuda Triangle movie. Alright, so let's get to this week's news items, and the first, of course, segment, like we always do, is Trailer Talk. And the first trailer we're going to talk about is George Clooney's Suburbicon.
Welcome to Suburbicon, a town of great wonder and excitement.
Hey there.
Built with the promise of prosperity for all.
Nikki, you need to get up. There are men in the house. Son, there's something I have to tell you. Those men killed your mom.
We've decided it'd be best if your Auntie Margaret came and stayed with us.
Nikki needs a mother.
We'll be strong. We'll be fine.
Mr. Lodge?
Yes.
You know a character named Rizzoli? He's a loan shark. If you were into the mob for money, that might explain what happened to your wife. Hi, pal.
This is the last time that clown's gonna ignore us. Take care of a kid. These animals took everything from us. I have to make decisions like what's best for the family.
Any progress on the investigation?
A mobster got killed a couple of days ago.
I can end the conversation real quick.
I'm sorry for his loss.
Life? Yeah, I guess he probably is too.
Nobody speak.
I'm here to collect.
What do you want?
I want all of it. All of it.
Nothing like this ever happened here. This is a safe place. It was. Would you like a cup of coffee?
Nobody speak. Towns and villages burning, looting, and pillaging.
I could have you killed in no time.
I could kill you too.
The film, it looks like it's going to be a crime comedy movie. It's directed by George Clooney. It's written by him and the Coen brothers and one other person that I forgot to write down. So the film takes place in the 50s. And Matt Damon, who is in the film, he's the lead. His character, he's kind of like this very like mild-mannered kind of guy, and something happens. We've seen the trailer. His wife passes away, and it starts to unravel this like little like this kind of underground kind of secret within this kind of seemingly, it's almost like Pleasantville in a way, but you know, it's like this peaceful, perfect, you know, outer shell, and then there's like this really like seedy underground and for it, and it looks pretty good. It really looks really funny. You know, George Clooney's known for his, you know, kind of more serious movies, with the exception of Leatherheads, which was, you know, a comedy movie as well. But this looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, it looks really good. That final scene in the trailer, it's Matt Damon. You know, kind of there's an explosion. And he kind of just looks at it and he's like, "Oh crap!" And he starts running. You'd think he's gonna run, but instead he's riding this little not motorcycle, this little bicycle, and he's just riding away. And it's great. It's a nice visual. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks really funny. I can't wait for this. I actually been looking forward to it for a while. Now finally seeing something. Looks pretty cool. So that's Suburbicon, and it will also star Julianne Moore and Oscar Isaac. That comes out on October 27th, so you can mark your calendar for that. Let's move on to the second trailer of the week, which was the new trailer for the new Stephen King adaptation of It.
When you're a kid, you think the universe revolves around you. You think that you'll always be protected and cared for. Then, one day, you realize that's not true. Because when you're alone as a kid, the monsters see you as weaker. You don't even know they're getting closer. Till it's too late.
My grandfather thinks this town is cursed. That all the bad things that happen in this town are because of one thing. An evil thing.
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too.
George. I saw something.
The clown. Yeah, I saw him too. You'll float too.
What happens when another Georgie goes missing? Or one of us?
You'll float too.
Are you just gonna pretend it isn't happening like everyone else in this town? If we stick together, we'll win.
This is a damn good trailer. It is. It's directed by Andy Muschietti, who directed Mama. And if you're not familiar with the book or even the old movie, or TV movie, I should say, it follows the losers, and they're a group of young kids. That's the Losers Club. That's what they call themselves, and people around them. It's a group of young kids who are constantly bullied by all these people, and one day they come across, of course, a clown, an evil clown who calls himself Pennywise. And Pennywise has a history in the town that dates back centuries, and everyone thinks that the town is cursed, and because of that, you know, and one of the reasons because of that is because of Pennywise. So I saw the TV movie when I was a kid. I remember a lot of things, but I don't remember too much. But I don't think you have to watch the old movie to appreciate what this is, because this is a brand new version. They're saying that it's going to be closer to the book, but they are also adding some things of their own, which sounds really great. And the first trailer that premiered a couple months ago, it broke trailer records. It was like the highest viewed trailer in a while, and especially for a horror movie. And in this trailer, it's just more scare. It brings a lot more scares. We get a lot more shots of the losers, played by a variety of a young cast, and we see a lot more of Pennywise. We actually hear him talk for the first time, and it's just a really good trailer. I mean, it's horrifying. It does its job. It horrifies you. And that last shot, man, that gets me. I've seen the trailer twice now, and that last shot still gets me. I know it's coming, and it still gets me. So it's a great trailer. It's a good trailer, and I can't wait to see it on the big screen once again. Of course, this will be the first movie. They are doing a sequel that will follow the adults, very similar to the TV movie as well. So it will come out on September 8th. We'll definitely be talking more about it when we get closer to the release date. Alright, so let's move on to this week's news items. And the first news item we're going to talk about is a big news item. Any other podcast would be a big news item of the week at the very end. But considering we just talked about Comic-Con on the previous podcast, and considering how big this news item is, I want to put it out to the forefront. The Justice League reshoots are more extensive than anyone thought. So Warner Brothers made it no secret, of course, that reshoots were underway for Justice League. They announced that reshoots were going to be looked over and directed by Joss Whedon, who was stepping in for Zack Snyder after he had stepped down because of the loss of his daughter. And we just thought that it would be kind of this typical kind of reshoots thing. Usually reshoots, for those of you who don't know, usually cost around $6 to $10 million and only go for a few weeks or a month, depending on the movie. However, according to some reports, more specifically Variety, the reshoots are, again, like I mentioned, more extensive than anyone thought. So one of the reasons they think the reshoots are more extensive is because of the success of Wonder Woman. So they want to ride on that success, which is a good thing, but they want to ride on that success of Wonder Woman and make the movie better. So the reshoots are nearing $25 million, and they're ranging roughly 2 months of additional filming and reshoots in London and Los Angeles. So why is this a big deal? Like I mentioned, reshoots usually cost, from the report, $6 to $10 million and only last a few weeks, maybe a month of it, if that. But it's usually just a few weeks. Also, with a big film like this, and considering the cast that is massive, the studio is trying to juggle a lot of schedules. Now, Ben Affleck and Gal Gadot's schedules are free, since neither one of them have any films lined up, at least at the moment. However, Ezra Miller and Henry Cavill do have some things on their schedule. Now, Ezra Miller is currently filming Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them 2. But lucky for him, it's within the same studio, so they can work around his schedule and move things around, considering that, again, it's the same studio. Cavill, though, and he already kind of made fun of this on his social media. He's currently filming Mission Impossible 5, and apparently the studio, for his character Mission Impossible 5, he has a mustache, and for his character, and apparently Paramount, who is releasing the Mission Impossible movies, they don't want him to shave the mustache off because they're still filming. And obviously, if you've ever grown a mustache, you know that it takes a while. Of course, they can add a fake mustache, but I think everyone will know it would be a fake mustache. So apparently what they're doing now over at Warner Brothers is that when Cavill comes in for his scheduled reshoots, they're going to edit out his mustache, which I thought was interesting because that's something that I've never heard before. So they're going to edit out his mustache and his facial hair in Justice League. And of course, Cavill, like I mentioned, he came out on social media and he made a joke about his mustache and calling it like a mega weapon that the studios are trying to get rid of. So it was a fun little thing. If you want to go check it out, you should. But yeah, so there you go. Variety also reports that Joss Whedon, who has now done months of filming and some dialogue punch-up, which was originally what he was supposed to do. He was just supposed to do a few weeks of reshoots and do some dialogue punch-ups, which is what he's known for, will apparently not get a co-director credit. Although some people are saying that he will, some people are saying that he isn't, so there is that going on. However, they do say that he will get potentially a producer or screenwriter credit considering the work he's done so far. So we'll have to wait and see kind of officially what all that goes on. Obviously, that's not the first time that we've been dealing with this. Obviously, the Han Solo movie is going through this right now. The speculation on who gets the director's credit. Will it be Phil Lord and Chris Miller? Will it be Ron Howard? Will they each of them get director's credit? We don't know what's going to go with that. Obviously, Rogue One went through the same thing. But at the end of the day, Garth Edwards got the director's credit, so we'll see what happens with that. But of course, we all know what Joss Whedon has done, but they don't know what's going on with that. Ray Fisher, who plays Victor Stone, aka Cyborg in the film, did mention during their Comic-Con panel that the reshoots were for him, saying, quote, "They're brief if anything." But of course, maybe the reshoots for him were brief. Who knows about everyone else in the cast? Now, I know reshoots is a dirty word. It's become a dirty word for fans because I think they don't realize that reshoots are already built into the schedules of a lot of movies, especially movies this big, like Justice League and you name it. Justice League, the Star Wars movies, Marvel movies, anything that has a massive budget. The reason sometimes why it's a massive budget is because they have a built-in weeks that they consider reshoots and/or additional photography. So when people hear the word reshoots, they're like, "Oh, something's wrong with the movie." No, it's not. It's not the case. It's not always the case. So at the end of the day, though, whatever the reshoots are, however the budget is, I mean, it's not necessarily troubling too much, because we don't know the extent of what these reshoots are. I think at the end of the day, as long as the movie's good, that's all I really care about, and I think that's all anyone should care about. But we'll see what happens with this. Again, reshoots are not a big deal really anymore, so hopefully fans can get used to that. But the fact that they came out and said that the reshoots are bigger than what we thought, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, it's not necessarily, gonna probably calm some people down that Justice League is having problems. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Alright, so let's move on to the rest of the movie news items. Sticking with DC in this point, Wonder Woman 2 officially gets a release date. So a surprise to no one, of course, Warner Brothers has finally confirmed and greenlit a sequel to Wonder Woman, and they've given a release date of December 13th, 2019. Now, obviously, that's a change of pace. The first Wonder Woman movie came out during the summer. It came out in June, so I'm not sure. Why they went from June to December, but whatever the case is, we know, especially considering the success of the first Wonder Woman, that I'm pretty sure whenever they release this movie, it was going to make a crap ton of money, or it is going to make a crap ton of money. However, despite releasing the release date, there is no word yet on who will direct the movie. They didn't say who was directing the movie, which means that Patty Jenkins is still in negotiations with the studio to come back and direct. We do know that she did a treatment of the script with Jeff Johns, and she's been very adamant about coming back to direct the sequel, but right now there's still negotiations, and I hope that there is some chance that Warner Brothers makes a deal with her, because if they don't, I'm sure there will be a lot of fans that will be disappointed, including me, Patty Jenkins did an amazing job, and why take that away from her? I mean, you can make the argument that maybe they want to go a different route, which is fine, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The next movie news item is we go from DC to Marvel in this extent. Brie Larson's Captain Marvel will not be in Avengers Infinity War. One of the co-directors on the Avengers movies, I believe it was Joe Russo, has confirmed that Brie Larson's Captain Marvel will not be in Avengers Infinity War, which is fine. There's already enough characters in Infinity War. At least we can probably get some sort of tease, maybe. We'll see. I mean, I'm a bit bummed out that she's not going to be in it, but she can always be in the next one, so we'll see what happens with that. Talked about Star Wars earlier. The next movie news item, Warwick Davis has joined the Han Solo film. So another veteran, of course, of the Star Wars franchise has joined the Han Solo series. Warwick Davis will appear in the Han Solo movie in an unspecified role. However, his involvement was revealed from the director himself, Ron Howard, who revealed it on Twitter, which is pretty cool. Now, Davis has played multiple characters throughout the Star Wars films, like an Ewok and a character in Return of the Jedi. He's also played characters in The Phantom Menace, The Force Awakens, and even Rogue One. So he's very familiar with the Star Wars franchise, and he's very familiar with Ron Howard as well. So that's pretty cool. Moving on, Nicholas Hoult is eyed to play J.R.R. Tolkien in a biopic. Nicholas Hoult is currently in talks to star in the J.R.R. Tolkien biopic called Tolkien. Of course, for those of you guys who don't know, he is the author and creator of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the series. He also wrote The Hobbit as well. Negotiations are said to be in the early stages, but Hoult is the top choice. By the way, Nicholas Hoult, Beast in the new X-Men movies. He was also in Warm Bodies as well. The script is said to focus on the author as he finds friendship, love, and artistic inspiration among a group of classmates prior to the outbreak of World War I in 1914. He served in the British Armed Forces from 1916 to 1920, and then he wrote 2 novels while working at Pembroke College. The film will be directed by a Finnish director named Dome Karolowski. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that wrong. If you know the podcast, you probably know I pronounced that wrong. The project has been in the works since 2013 over at Fox Searchlight and Sharon Entertainment, but it looks like they're finally moving forward with it, and Nicholas Hoult would be a pretty nice choice. Now, Nicholas Hoult is already playing another historical figure. He's playing Nikola Tesla in the current war with Benedict Cumberbatch, which I believe is set to come out. Mix those words up. I believe it's set to come out later this year. It will premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival, so I believe it will be coming out later this year. Could be wrong about that, but from what I read, I think that is true. He is currently filming, of course, X-Men Dark Phoenix at the moment, so we'll keep an eye on that project as it moves forward on my end. Sarah Paulson has joined M. Night Shyamalan's Glass. Of course, M. Night Shyamalan's newest thriller, Glass, is a sequel to Split and Unbreakable, and Sarah Paulson has now joined the other impressive cast members. James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy, Bruce Willis, and Samuel L. Jackson will all return to the film. Sarah Paulson is the first new cast member within this little world. We don't know who she's playing at the moment, but talent is talent, and she is always reliable in whatever she does, so I'm not complaining over here. Glass will be filming soon, sometime, I believe, early next year. It does have a release date of January 18th, 2019, so obviously they'll be hearing a lot more casting updates on that. Anne Hathaway is eyed for the live-action Barbie film. The live-action Barbie film took a hit earlier this summer when Amy Schumer, who was originally going to star in the movie, dropped out due to scheduling conflicts, and now it looks like they're circling Anne Hathaway. The dragging board broke the news, and while there's no deal yet, landing someone like Hathaway could put Barbie on a lot of people's lists, and considering that it's a Barbie film, well, I'm pretty sure we're not thinking too much of a Barbie film, but you got Anne Hathaway in there, pretty sure you're going to start paying attention. Now, of course, like I said, there's no deal yet, so Hathaway hasn't officially signed on. The film does have a director in Althea Jones, and does have a polished script by Schumer, because when she was signed on, she also did some work on the script. We don't know if they'll still be using Schumer's script, considering she's not attached anymore, but we'll see what happens when more of that comes out. The film is set to be in the vein of Splash, Enchanted, and Big, with the main character getting kicked out of Barbie Land for not being perfect enough, and landing in a real-world adventure. Now, the film does currently have a release date of June 29th, 2018, so casting is a big priority for the project at the moment if they want to keep that release date. Now, obviously, again, Amy Schumer to Anne Hathaway, that's a big jump, and that's a big difference in leading characters, so we'll see, again, if they still use a Schumer script or not. Lionsgate may be developing a John Wick universe, as they've just just bought a new spec script called Ballerina. Now, Lionsgate has won a bidding war to pick up a female-centric spec action script titled Ballerina. However, the bigger story here, like I mentioned, is that they want it to start a spin-off and a universe in the films of John Wick. So the spec script was written by Shay Hatton, who is currently working as a writer's assistant for Robert Downey Jr.'s production company, Team Downey, but he's basically living the dream, because he graduated from film school last year, and teaming up with Team Downey, obviously Robert Downey Jr., one of the biggest names in Hollywood at the moment. He's basically living the dream, and he's pretty young too, so he's like in his early 20s, so good for him for that. So no plot details are known about Ballerina, but they do know that the story centers on a young woman raised as an assassin who must hunt down the other assassins that murdered her family. It is said to be in the vein of La Femme Nikita, but with a more pulpy, hyper-stylized bent a la Quentin Tarantino. So the studio does end up connecting it to the John Wick universe. It should be kind of easy considering that plot point. You can connect it to the Continental. Obviously, you can make the assassins part of the Continental, which was, of course, the hotel where John Wick goes. You can probably introduce the gold coins in there. You know, we know that John Wick 3 is in the works right now, so it should be interesting to kind of see how this all turns out. Neill Blomkamp confirms his next project is a book adaptation of the soon-to-be-released The Gone World. Now, Neill Blomkamp, of course, the director of District 9, he's not doing his Alien film anymore because Fox and Ridley Scott pretty much killed that. But now he's finding success over on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel called Hault Studio, where he's been releasing these short films that are really, really good. If you haven't checked it out yet, highly recommend you do. It's really the short movies he's releasing there are top notch. But Blomkamp will return to the big screen with an adaptation of the novel The Gone World. Like I mentioned, the novel hasn't come out yet. It will come out next year in February, but apparently he's been talking with the author of the book, and they've been kind of communicating back and forth, and it looks like when the book finally comes out, Neill Blomkamp will be working on the movie. Now, the book synopsis reads like this. In western Pennsylvania in 1997, Shannon Moss is assigned to solve the murder of a Navy SEAL's family and to locate his teenage daughter who has disappeared. Though she can't share the information with conventional law enforcement, Moss discovers that the missing CIA SEAL was an astronaut aboard a spaceship USS Libra, a ship assumed lost to the darkest currents of deep time. Moss knows firsthand the mental trauma of time travel and believes the SEAL's experience with the future has triggered his violence. So yes, there is a sci-fi element to the movie. I mean, what else? It is Neill Blomkamp, after all. This doesn't sound too bad, It sounds like you read it first and it's like, oh, okay, it's like this little typical kind of maybe murder, mystery, crime thriller. And then you hear astronaut and you're like, okay. And then you hear deep time, and then you find out that there's time travel involved. So yeah, it's sci-fi. So this is pretty cool. I like the little genre mashups that they got, and then you have Neill Blomkamp, of course, who is a master of the sci-fi genre pretty much by now, and you can add his little touch to it. And it looks like it's gonna be pretty damn cool. So there is that. I am interested in reading the book now as well. The Gone World is what it's called. So let's move on to the next news item. Jared Leto is in talks for the graphic novel adaptation of Bloodshot. Now, Jared Leto is in talks with Sony Pictures for their adaptation of the comic book Bloodshot. The property is actually the second film in a 5-picture deal with the studio, or 5-picture deal that the studio made, I should say, with Valiant Entertainment to make a potential new franchise. The first film that is getting made is Harbinger. Now, if Leto signs on, he hasn't again signed on, he's still in talks. He will play Angelo Mortanelli. He is a ruthless killer for the mob who's set up by the family and framed for murder. He instead goes into witness protection, but is betrayed by an FBI agent guarding him, kidnapped and forcibly, I can't read now, subjugated to an experimental program in which the body is injected with microscopic computers called nanites. They erase his brain and rebuild it, and his body is to be a weapon with superhuman strength and healing powers. So there you go. Leto is reportedly, if he signs on, it seems like he will be signed on for multiple movies, as the idea is to make 2 movies for Bloodshot and then 2 movies for Harbinger, eventually leading to the crossover where the characters meet, called the Harbinger Wars. Now again, this is based off a graphic novel that connects to, again, the Harbinger series over at Valiant Entertainment. I haven't read the graphic novel. I didn't really know too much about it. We did talk about it briefly here on the podcast before when it was first announced, but it looks like they're finally moving forward a little bit with the series. There is currently no production date or release date at the moment, so there is that to be concerned. Everything's still in the early stages, so we'll see what happens with that. Here's a little fun little news item that when I read it, I was like, is this really a news item? But then I was thinking about it like, I guess it could be a little fun. I mean, we don't need to have, these big, deep movie news items all the time. Steven Soderbergh's next film, Logan Lucky, has a writer that potentially maybe doesn't even exist. So Steven Soderbergh, again, he retired, but he came back, and he has Logan Lucky coming out in theaters next month. However, there was a story on The Hollywood Reporter that, like I mentioned, Steven Soderbergh, the writer for his film, Logan Lucky, probably doesn't exist. So the writer for the movie that's credited is named Rebecca Blunt, and people have been doing some research, and she doesn't exist. Even the cast thought she was real, and they don't know that she didn't exist. So the way the report goes on their Hollywood Reporter is that they think it could be a pseudonym for either Soderbergh himself or maybe even his wife. Now, his wife is Jules Asner, and she is a longtime E-host, and she's never written a film before, but she has written a novel called Whacked. But again, she hasn't written a film before. Now, they say it could be her. However, they're also saying that it could be Soderbergh himself who wrote the film, which would make his first screenplay credit since 2002 Solaris. Now, Soderbergh is known for using pseudonyms. He's used pseudonyms before to be his own cinematographer and to be his own editor, so it wouldn't be a complete shock for him to use pseudonyms. People have used pseudonyms in the past, of course, dating all the way back to the whole communist era. They had the blacklist of screenwriters and directors who they thought were communists, and a lot of them who were either not communist or were communist, however you want to do that. They use pseudonyms to keep working. So Soderbergh has used pseudonyms in the past. The Writers Guild of America does allow people to use pseudonyms as long as they have established those pseudonyms with them and have given them enough time to allow them to process everything. So it's not completely out there that Steven Soderbergh would do this, or maybe he wrote it with his wife and they're just using them together, or it's a pseudonym for his wife or whatever. But it, again, not groundbreaking news. It's just a little something cool that I thought we could talk about. It's funny. So Logan Lucky opens on August 18th. We'll probably see who this Rebecca Blunt, if she does exist, is by then, or if Steven Soderbergh just was like, yeah, no, it was me. or it was my wife. We'll see. Sylvester Stallone strongly is hinting that Ivan Drago, or at least someone related to him, will be in Creed 2. Now, over the Independence Day holiday, I know it's almost the end of July, but over the Independence holiday, there was a story that broke out that I didn't really talk about, mostly because it just seemed like one of those things that people were looking way too into, and it was just one of those things I just didn't really want to talk about. However, Sylvester Stallone keeps doing this, and it just seems, and he is a producer on the movie, so it just seems like he's really saying that this might happen. So Sylvester Stallone has been teasing the return of course, a popular Rocky storyline and character for the sequel to Creed 2, and that character, like I mentioned, is Ivan Drago, that of course was played by Dolph Lundgren in the movie. Now, Stallone has used his Instagram. He's been posting behind-the-scenes photos of the movie, of the old Rocky movie, and has been captioning them, making them sound like either Drago or someone related to him in the Drago lineage, like his son or something, could face Michael B. Jordan's Adonis Johnson character and relive the history of that momentous fight, and the monumentous fight where Drago kills Apollo's father, Apollo Creed, played by Carl Weathers. That's not a spoiler, because that movie's old, so settle the hell down. And they even mentioned it in Creed. If you haven't seen Creed yet, what's wrong with you? Just go watch that. That should be the first thing you do as soon as you listen to this podcast. Go watch Creed. So the idea sounds cool on paper, but the execution, of course, is going to be what either makes or breaks the idea. Now, no offense to Dolph Lundgren, because he can probably break me in half just by looking at me, but he's not young anymore, and he may not move as fast, and he may not be as nimble as he was back then, especially the character of Drago, because, you know, but you know, I mean, they could go you gotta prove yourself, you know, you gotta fight me, you know, I'm the one that killed your old man, you know. You can build up that drama. You can be like, oh, it's Ivan Drago, you know, he wants to challenge, you know, Adonis. Maybe from, you know, within the film timeline, you know, a lot of time has passed and he's been proving himself, and Drago sees this and he's like, oh, well, it's the guy who's, I killed his father in the ring. I'm gonna see if he's as good as his old man. And then you got that little build up. So we don't know, but again, on paper it sounds cool. Execution-wise, it could be different. Now, we don't know if this will happen, or maybe again it will be, you know, Drago's son, and Drago pops up and he's like, you know, it's like, this is my son, you know, he will break you like I broke your father, something similar to that line. And I don't know. It's again, sounds cool on paper. Execution-wise is going to be what makes or breaks this movie. Either way, Creed 2 is being worked on at the moment. I can't wait to see it, because I really, really, really liked the first Creed movie. I thought it was better than I thought it was going to be, and I was just immensely surprised by it. And I hope that the sequel is just as good as the first one, maybe even better. So let's move on to the next news. James Cameron is considering a new Terminator trilogy again. So the Terminator franchise has, of course, had some lows. Some real lows throughout its run. However, it's the fans, of course, that keep, you know, their love for the franchise, that keep this franchise going. Now, this week, it was announced that James Cameron, the originator, of course, of the series, has apparently been working with the current rights holder, David Ellison, to reinvigorate the series when Cameron gets the rights back next year. Now, back in January, word broke out that Cameron was looking to oversee a new Terminator reboot with director Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool, now to potentially direct. Of course, nothing came from it because nothing was made official, and even if that was official, Cameron doesn't have the rights to Terminator until next year, so he wouldn't be able to do anything about that. However, Cameron has spoke on the subject, revealing he was not only looking for one film, he was looking for a whole rebooted trilogy. And this is what he said, saying, quote, "The question is, has the franchise run its course, or can it be freshened up? So I am in discussion with David Ellison, who is the current rights holder globally for the Terminator franchise and the rights in the US market, revert to me under U.S. copyright law in a year and a half, so he and I are talking about what we can do. Right now we are leaning toward doing a 3-film arc and reinventing it." End quote. Now, I know what you're asking. Why are they still doing more Terminator movies? Especially after the last one, Terminator Genesis, or Genesis, however you want to pronounce it, was meant to be a reboot to the trilogy, even acting kind of as a straight remake / reboot in a lot of ways. Of course, the film didn't do as well as they had hoped, and it didn't help that they gave away they gave away and ruined a big plot point in the trailers that probably could have been a really cool moment in the film itself. Because knowing that going in, it's like, oh, okay, like I know already. That was really dumb when they did that. That was really, really dumb. I think I'm not usually one of those guys like, oh, they gave away too much in the trailer. That was stupidly dumb what they did. But anyway, now obviously Cameron wasn't involved in the last film. I mean, I think he gave some input, but that was it. And he won't be able to get too involved, even if he gets the rights back, because he's gonna be, you know, knee deep in production or post-production for the Avatar movies that he's doing. So I don't know. I mean, part of me I think part of me wants to see another Terminator movie if it's done well, because I love the movie. Terminator 2 is still, in my eyes, one of the best action movies ever made. And you know, Terminator 3 was kind of disappointing. I didn't hate Terminator Salvation like a lot of other people did. I think it had some pretty great moments, but it wasn't a good movie. But I didn't hate it as much as other people did. And Terminator Genesis was just it was bad. It was really bad. It just I didn't like it whatsoever. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with the Terminator franchise. If they want to go back and try again, great. Don't do the 3 arcs, because you can tell in Terminator Genesis that they were setting up this new franchise, even though they gave away, you know, it was like, oh, there's still one more twist in the movie. No one cares, because you gave away the twist that mattered within the movie itself, and no one cared anymore. So no one saw it because it was bad or whatever. It wasn't that great. It wasn't. If you're thinking about watching Terminator Genesis, I mean, you can if you want. I mean, there was, I want to say there was like one cool moment, but for the life of me, I can't remember immediately right now what that was. So I don't know. Let's just move on. To the final news item of the week. Actually, final news items of the week, because they're all connected into one little umbrella. Again, at least at the time of this recording, that is. I am recording this a little earlier than I usually do. So we have some James Bond news on the podcast. We have a lot of James Bond news, actually. So the first bit of James Bond news is that the New York Times reports that Daniel Craig is coming back to play James Bond. Now, the New York Times isn't a place where you should rely to get your movie news. However, it is a reliable publication, so we should take this as a, not necessarily grain of salt, but we should at least take it within reason that yes, maybe Daniel Craig is coming back to play James Bond one last time. Now, according to them, they quote 2 people briefed on the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity to avoid conflicts with Eon and MGM. Eon, by the way, EON, they are the current rights holders to the James Bond franchise, said that Craig is coming back. Now, the studio hasn't come out to say that he is officially back, so we shouldn't hold our breath on that, but it would be nice to see Craig come back one last time, you know, to end on a strong note. Not saying Spectre wasn't terrible, but you know, it could have been better, especially after Skyfall, but we'll see. Now, the second James Bond news is that the owners of the Bond property, like I mentioned, Aeon, announced the release date for the James Bond movie, and that is going to be on November 8th, 2019. They also confirmed that longtime Bond writers Neil Purvis and Robert Wade will write the script for the movie. But of course, the big news item for that was that its release date on November 8th, 2019, which means they will start filming sometime next year. Maybe even begin sometime late this year. We'll see for that. But the final news item and the final big tidbit for the James Bond news over the week is that a short list of directors was announced. Now, according to multiple reports, there are 3 being eyed, and they are David Mackenzie, Jan Demange, I think that's how you say his last name, and Denis Villeneuve. Now, Demange directed a thriller called 71, and is currently directing a film with Matthew McConaughey called White Boy Rick, which is based off a book. And Demange got a lot of praise and a lot of critical praise. Yeah, critical praise for the thriller 71. It got a limited release here in the States, but the people I've seen nothing but good things about 71, so probably have to check that out. And White Boy Rick, Matthew McConaughey, part of his McConaissance, if you will. There's someone else big in that movie. I can't remember who it is, but the book is also said to be very good as well. So we'll see what happens with that. Mackenzie, of course, he directed the hit film Hell or High Water, and he's been eyed for many other films since then, but he hasn't really signed on to a lot of them. He is going to direct a Netflix movie called Outlaw King about the Scottish King Robert the Bruce. That's I believe set to start filming sometime later this year. I could be wrong about that, but he is going to be doing that next. He was also eyed for the Scarface remake and something else recently, but I can't remember what that was. But he's being eyed for a lot of things, and as he should be. He's a great director. Of course, Villeneuve is coming off Arrival that came out last year, and he has Blade Runner 2049 coming out later this year in October. It should be noted, though, that Variety got word that Demange is the main frontrunner for James Bond, since Villeneuve's next film is likely to be an adaptation of Dune. So unless he decides to push back Dune, which I doubt, since he's been very adamant about making Dune his next movie and about directing that, Villeneuve could be out of the running. Mackenzie, again, depending on when they start filming, if he's going to start filming The Outlaw King, then he could be out of the running for that too. So it looks like Demange will probably end up directing that. Now, of course, Sam Mendes, who directed Skyfall and Spectre, will not return. He announced, I believe he announced earlier this year, or maybe even late last year, that he was not going to come back to direct. So he's out of the running for that. There has been a lot of talks recently that Christopher Nolan and Edgar Wright could potentially end up directing, although that's been just a lot of talk. And, you know, Christopher Nolan's name has been attached to directing a James Bond movie for a long time. So we should just take his name as a grain of salt. His name will always be on a short list of directors, even if it's not official, because he's just been talking. I think ever since Inception, he's been on a short list of directors to direct James Bond. So we'll see. And Edgar Wright, of course, I think it'd be interesting to see Edgar Wright direct a James Bond movie. I really would. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So, but again, the 3 main people that they've been looking at, Jan Demange, David Mackenzie, and Denis Villeneuve. Again, Demange is the main frontrunner right now, at least according to Variety's report. But again, with the release date of 2019, filming again will probably likely start sometime next year. So we'll probably be hearing a lot more about Bond 25. Yes, you heard me, Bond 25, sooner rather than later. And that's it, guys. That's all the news items that have come out, at least at the time of this recording. Like I mentioned, I am recording this a little earlier than I usually do. Of course, that won't matter if I end up, depending on how long editing takes and depending on how long it takes to process. But that is all the movie news items that I have currently in front of me. There was a rumor going out. I forgot to mention this. I didn't make a note of it. There was a rumor about David Ayer potentially not being attached to Gotham City Sirens anymore. I didn't read the report, I just saw the headline, but then I saw that he was still attached. So if you're wondering where that news item was, I'll have a write-up soon on the Facebook page for that. But I didn't talk about it because it seemed like he was still going to be attached. And until something official comes out, I won't be talking about that for the moment. So there is that. But if there's again, this week seemed a little light because there is a lot of casting and directing tidbits that I didn't talk about on the podcast just due to time and trying to make everything flow just right. So there are a lot of news items up on the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/moviepit. There is a link down below in the description/show notes area if you just want to click on that and go check it out. Give me a like over there. I'd really appreciate it. Pretty much gives you an early preview of what we're going to talk about on the podcast, although I do go a little bit more into detail on the podcast than I do on the Facebook page. Just want to let that be known. So yeah, there is that. Also down there is a links to or my Instagram and Twitter. So I'm trying to say there is a link down there. There are multiple links down there. There's also a link to the WordPress account where I do non-spoiler written reviews. I do have a Dunkirk written review up there. I still have to do a written review for Valerian. Don't know if I'll be doing that anytime soon. I did like the movie. I thought it was okay. I just haven't gotten enough time to write a review. I do have a review up, though, for Atomic Blonde. I've been sitting on that review for a while because I saw Atomic Blonde earlier this month. We'll talk about it briefly right now when we talk about it in the this week's releases. But yeah, so there's a written review up for that as well. There's of course the links to the trailers for Suburbicon and It, and if another trailer drops, it'll be down there as well. There is a trailer to all the Comic-Con trailers. In case you missed them, they'll be linked down there as well, along with the trailer for Triple Threat, which is a action movie with a who's who of action stars. You got Tony Jaa, you got Iko Uwais, Michael Jai White, Michael Bisping. I know I'm missing someone. Tiger Chen is in there as well. Scott Adkins. It's a who's who of martial artists. I'm really looking forward to that. I've been looking forward to that for a while, but it's down there if you want to go check it out as well. And a bunch of other stuff is down there as well if you want to go check it out. Do me a favor, go like the Facebook page. Link also down there to the iTunes link if you're listening to this on YouTube or SoundCloud. There is a link to the iTunes. I am on iTunes now, so if YouTube or SoundCloud are too inconvenient for you guys, you can go like me on iTunes, or you can go subscribe on iTunes, leave me a review, leave me a rating, and I will read it here on the podcast for you guys. Give you guys nice little shout outs for that. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Plug wise anyway. So let's move on to this week's releases. We have 2 limited releases this week. We have the first one is an inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power. Decade after An Inconvenient Truth brought climate change into the heart of popular culture comes the follow-up that shows just how close we are to a real energy revolution. Now, the film was going to get a wide release. However, they changed it up to a limited release. It will be getting a wide release rollout starting next week. So if you don't see it in your theaters this week, you can expect to see it in the coming weeks, especially next week. So there is that. This week also is a limited release for Detroit. I didn't find out about this limited release until earlier this week. They were going to start doing a limited release for Detroit. Of course, the movie directed by Catherine Bigelow and written by Mark Ball. They've worked together on Zero Dark 30 and The Hurt Locker. And of course, it's about the one incident during the Detroit riots, or the Detroit Rebellion, as it's called in the synopsis, at the Algiers Hotel. It's got a great cast. We'll talk about that more next week, because next week is its wide release. But I do want to mention that if you see Detroit in your local theater, just know it's a limited release. It will still be there next week. So there is that. All right, let's talk about the wide releases. The first one is the Emoji Movie. Gene, a multi-expressional emoji, sets out on a journey to become a normal emoji. The voice cast includes T.J. Miller, Anna Faris, James Corden, Maya Rudolph, Sofia Vergara, and Patrick Stewart, of course, amongst many others. I have no interest in watching this movie. It made no connection to me. It was just one of those movies where I was like, meh. And I was right, because apparently the last time I checked, I'm not a big fan of Rotten Tomatoes. Every once in a while I do go check just to see what the number is, just for the hell of it. But apparently it's at 0%. No one is liking this movie. Everyone's saying it is awful. I'm not one of those guys like, haha, I told you. But it just, I don't know, it just doesn't look that well. It probably won't make a lot of money, because it doesn't matter if a kid's movie sucks. It's still going to make a lot of money and people are still going to go watch it. So there is that. The next wide release, the final wide release at this point, is Atomic Blonde. based on the graphic novel by Anthony Johnson. It is directed by David Leitch, one of the co-directors of John Wick. An undercover MI6 agent is sent to Berlin during the Cold War to investigate the murder of a fellow agent and recover a missing list of double agents. The film stars Charlize Theron, James McAvoy, Sophia Bontella, Bill Skarsgård, Toby Jones, Eddie Marsden, and John Goodman. Like I mentioned, I got passes to an advanced free screening of Atomic Blonde earlier this month, so I've been sitting on my review, and I've been sitting on this movie for a while. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. Story-wise, it drags a little bit. I will admit that the movie does drag a little bit. It's there's just a lot of characters. It's very dense in a lot of places, but action-wise, it will hold you over. It's probably some of the best action I've seen since John Wick. There is, though, a very highlighted big moment. It almost feels like a 10-15 minute long action sequence, and it is probably one of the best action sequences, fight sequences I have seen on the big screen in a very long time. I'm being completely honest. It is probably one of the best action sequences I've ever seen on the big screen. It is so cool. Charlize Theron is amazing in this movie. She's always amazing, but she's amazing in this movie, and the fact that she did her own stunts in this movie is fantastic. It just makes the fight scenes more cool and more real. I love it. I enjoy Atomic Blonde for the action scenes. The last act of the movie does really just kind of, especially that scene. It's just like that scene is like, for me, that scene saved the movie. Like, if that scene wasn't in the movie, I probably would have thought Atomic Blonde was a subpart movie, to be honest. But that fight scene, holy shit, is it good. So, I do recommend you go see Atomic Blonde. It is a very good movie. Like I mentioned, it does drag in a lot of areas, but when those action scenes kick in, man, they don't let you go. So yeah, Atomic Blonde, I'm gonna give it, I've been debating about either giving it a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5. I think I give it a 4 out of 5 in my written review, so I'll stick to that. I will stick to the 4 out of 5 for Atomic Blonde in my written review. I think the action scenes alone save the movie, so especially that specific action scene. So I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Since I gave it a 4 out of 5 in my written review that I released earlier today, so you'll be able to see that. All right. So also, speaking about free screenings, I went to a free screening of Annabelle Creation. I'll let you know how I thought about that later this when the movie comes out in 2 weeks. Although if you follow me on Instagram and Twitter, you know how I felt. It's scary as shit. I'll leave it at that. I'll go more into it when it comes out. So let's move on to this week's box office predictions. My picks last week were wrong because I underestimated one particular movie. I did mention, though, that I thought there would be an audience for it. I did say there would be an audience for it. I just didn't know the audience would really turn out for the movie. Also, I didn't see how the reviews were. Apparently, the reviews are very good for the movie, so there was that. So, my picks last week: Dunkirk at number 1, War for the Planet of the Apes at number 2, Spider-Man: Homecoming at number 3, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets at number 4, and at number 5, I thought it was going to be a battle between Despicable Me 3 and Girls Trip. The actual box office was Dunkirk at number 1, Girls Trip at number 2. Like I mentioned, there was I knew they were going to come out for the movie. I just didn't know how many people would come out, and it looks like a lot of people came out. So, Dunkirk number 1, Girls Trip number 2, Spider-Man: Homecoming number 3, War for the Planet of the Apes at number 4, and sorry, I lost count. And Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets came in at number 5 on that. So that was your box office. So this week's going to be interesting. Again, I don't think parents even care about the Rotten Tomato rating for a movie, so I think the Emoji Movie is going to probably do a little more better than I think people think, despite the reviews for it. So I think the Emoji Movie will be number 1. I think Atomic Blonde will be number 2. I would like for that to be reversed, but it's hard to kind of go up against a kids movie on a weekend, especially a movie like that. It's been getting a lot of promotions, so I think Emoji Movie will be number 1, Atomic Blonde will be number 2, Dunkirk will be number 3, Girls Trip will be number 4, and Spider-Man: Homecoming will round out the top 5 in the 5th position. That's just my thoughts. We don't know how it's going to work out. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the box office picks, but thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast for the week. I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, if any big news items drop, you can go over to the Facebook page. There's a link down below in the description area. Obviously, I'm always updating the Facebook page with news items. So if anything big drops, I will obviously let you guys know on the Facebook page. We'll talk about it next week on the podcast. There is always that as well. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Depending on where you're listening, whether you're listening on YouTube, SoundCloud, or iTunes, leave me your thoughts. Comment wise, if you're on iTunes, leave me a review and a rating and subscribe. And if you're on SoundCloud, again, do the same thing. Follow me, subscribe, leave me a comment, message me, whatever. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on the podcast was and on your thoughts on the news items were down below, wherever it is, message wise, comment wise. If you want to leave me a tweet, go to Instagram, go to the Facebook page, either one. Just let me know what you guys thought on the podcast and the movie news week that was, especially those trailers. I really want to see what you guys thought about those trailers. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys, and I think that's it. Yeah, I got nothing else for you guys. So stay safe this weekend. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Have some fun, and as always, go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movie!